As long as they're still laughing, that's the main thing.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, give me a sec. We're going live now. They're going to watch us on YouTube. This is the new age.
Yeah,
You're a
should
Chmiel.
be on Zoom.
Yeah.
And I could have worked there.
No,
You took the one class yesterday
you would have.
on the plane.
No, we didn't know. No.
I think she
Obviously
left.
know about it,
I think she left it at the airport.
Or on the plane. No. We were. There was a pilot. There was a pilot on the plane. No, he wasn't the pilot. He was on the way to a plane here to get a plane here, and he claimed, and he obviously radioed in during the flight. He claimed that he had money. I think I heard £7,000 something, and he went to sleep. He went to sleep, and he woke up, and the money was gone. And and as we arrived, they held us back. They told us the police are outside. They're doing investigation. They called a few guys over. People changed seats 3 times. They wanted to find out why they changed seats. And anyway, at the end, they couldn't get clarity from these 2-3 people. They decided they're going to search every person on the plane as they walk off in their hand luggage. So they searched us and my tefillin bags and my books. He says to me, "Wow, I'm searching a rabbi." He said to me, "I can see." I was like, "Okay, search me, fine." And he said, what this guy could do is he could spread the money across the plane and ask people to do him favors. And then, he's got 8,000 and 7,000 pounds, whatever. And if he can't find people, he may just leave it on the plane. So our next step is to search the plane. After we search all the people, we're going to search. 2 hours it took us to get off the plane. We landed about, no, Turkish. 2 hours. I mean, I don't know.
He's got, it's in Turkey somewhere.
I was like, I wonder if any other civilian would have done that. If someone says, like, I lost money, would they have called the police? I mean, no, I'm saying if you went up to a air hostess and said money was stolen from me, right? First of all, they would I don't know, would they call police and line up the police outside the plane as you land? I find that hard to believe.
We had a similar incident to one of these, buses in Barcelona, the tourist bus. The open up on and lady gets up, scream, share my cell phone call. The next stop, the police were on and they were searching. They found somebody in their bag.
With her phone. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. The same thing, they wouldn't allow anybody off.
Oh wow. Okay. Right, interesting.
If he had cash, 7, and he's also got pounds. Another 3, he's got 10,000 pounds. He can say, I got 10,000 pounds. Who's that 7 belong to the other one?
Yeah, you can't prove anything. Can't prove anything.
The best one was in the 90s. I think it was the 90s. You could only take a certain amount of money out of the country.
Yeah.
120,000 rand or whatever.
Yeah.
So one lady won a trip, and she said, somebody wealthy guy came and said to her, "Are you taking out your full allowance?" And she said, "Tell me ridiculous, I haven't got enough money to take out my full allowance." And he said, "How much are you taking out?" She said, "About 5,000 rand." And he said, "Okay, can I give you 100,000 rand to take out?" So she said, "Sure, with pleasure." And he said, "I've used my allowance, but I'll give it to you in cash. Will you take it out? And I'll give you details in London." Yeah. But she had 2 stories on another woman. And she took it. I mean, she landed there, phoned and said, "Have you deposited?" She said, "What money is it?"
What are you talking about?
Yeah. And there was nothing he could do. You couldn't report it. It was in you. So she
Classic.
No, but what they used to do in those days, we used to take drafts.
That's classic. And then, but the truth is, as we were getting off, because some of us had got off earlier than others, one of the guys on our group was approached, and the guy said to him, "Can you carry 3,000 rand off for me, or 3,000 pounds off for me?" Like, for real. As they're busy searching the plane, someone approached him and said, "Would you carry, I think, 3,000 pounds off the plane for me?" And we said, "Well," so he said no. But I said, like, "Don't you think this was the guy?" Like, there and then he was out. He said, "No, it wasn't the guy. He seemed very innocent." I said, "How do you know that? If they're looking for a guy with cash and you were offered 3,000 pounds, as we're all leaving, there's one or two of the guys still left behind us. One of them got offered £3,000 cash to carry off the plane. Could you help me and carry off 3,000? So he said no. But I said, why don't you tell the police? No, he was an innocent guy. He didn't mean anything. I said, how do you know that? It could be the guy they're looking for. He's offering you £3,000 to take off the plane.
Not good.
Anyway, I don't think he said anything. I don't think he reported anything in. Because then he'll be there for another 5 hours before he got home to his family. So, all right. We're on 18B4. Welcome back to Rachmil.
Thank you.
Nice to have you back. 18B4, laws of Bikurim, the first fruits. And laws of Bikurim. And it's a brand new case.
I didn't lock the door.
That's okay. We're in a safe street now. Baruch Hashem. Let's go. Omer of Rabba Bar Ada, Omer of Yitzchak. Bikurim. Over the page, 19A1. I sent on the group. Johnny, come and see on the group. I sent it out. Menachem, look on the group. You have your phones? You have your phones? Yeah. I posted it on the group. You'll see a copy.
Yeah, copy here.
No, they're out there.
That's gone.
And then you can turn around turn your phone around. It will give you a wide lens as well. There we go. Exactly. Okay, so at what point is one liable for eating the Bikurim? He's talking about the actual owners themselves. A non-kohen who ate the Bikurim. Because normally the Bikurim are only eaten by Kohanim. He's the farmer who's bringing up the Bikurim, right? So at what point is he now chayev or liable for the death penalty? Let's look at number one. Now, 3 prohibitions associated with eating Bikurim. As we learned above, the verse, you shall not eat in your outlying cities, etc., prohibits A, eating Bikurim outside Yerushalayim, number 1. B, eating of them before the essential part of the mitzvah is performed. Each of these violations is punishable by Makkos. We learned that last week. If you do it before the declaration, right, or before putting it by the altar. Furthermore, even after the mitzvah is fulfilled, Bikurim are prohibited to non-Kohanim on pain of death at the hands of heaven. Bikurim are considered like Truma, because the Torah calls them Trumas Yedchem, the Truma of your hand. And since the Torah prohibits Truma to non-Kohanim on pain of death, the same applies to Bikurim as well. Rashi explains Rav Bar Ada is inquiring at what point a non-Kohen becomes liable to death for eating Bikurim. That is, at what point is their procedure to do Bikurim? At what point in their procedure do Bikurim assume the sanctified status of Truma? Tosfos adds that the query also pertains to when a Kohen becomes liable to Makkos for eating the Bikurim outside Yerushalayim. So I guess you can carry. There's 2 parts to the question. Number 1 for a non-Kohen and number 1 for a Kohen as well. This prohibition too takes effect only when the Bikurim become sanctified. Okay. So that summarizes that point. So the answer is, what's the answer? Mishayiru Pnei Habayis. When they see the face of the temple, meaning they come into the courtyard. Once they come into the courtyard, then they become holy. And once they become holy, the non-Kohen can't eat them. And the Kohen can't take them out of the walls of Yerushalayim either. So both issues will happen. So in other words, until that point in time, they're actually not holy. Until that point in time, they're actually not holy. What are they? They're potentially holy. I've collected them from my field. And I'm taking them now to Yerushalayim, right? But they're not actually considered Truma or Bikurim. And therefore, they don't have the same prohibition or the same issue. Okay. So it says the Gemora, back to second paragraph, come on. Who is this ruling like? Ki hai Tana. It's in accordance with this following Tana, the following teacher of the Brisa. Tanya, as it says in the Brisa, Rabbi Eliezer says, Bikurim miksosam bachutz, miksosam bifnim. What happens if Bikurim were partially outside the courtyard and partially inside? So they were brought up to the base of Mikdash, or to the entrance, but some of the fruits were in and some of the fruits were out. That's a real Gemara question. Where have you had the question?
The tree that was half in the Arei Miklat.
Am I right?
Oh, the tree. Yeah. Whether he climbed the tree from the inside of the Ir Miklat or he climbed the tree from the outside of the Ir Miklat. We had that story.
There's another. Okay.
Not about the Bikurim. I don't recall that.
Okay.
Okay. So you got some Bikurim, some inside, some outside. If you look at number 3, footnote, this would seemingly apply when the Bikurim were in 2 vessels. Accordingly, the expression partly inside and partly outside is used because all the fruits were designated as Bikurim together by the owner, and so are regarded as a unit. And therefore, one vessel was here, one vessel was there. Possibly, however, the Tana refers even to a case where all fruits are in a single vessel, and he maintains that we view each fruit independently rather than the vessel as a whole. So the vessel sitting, so to speak, on the border, and some of the fruits of that vessel are over this line, and some of the fruits of that vessel are over that line. And now you have to decide what the din regarding the fruits. Either it's 2 separate baskets, one here, one there, or if it's the same basket, some of the fruits are here, some of the fruits are there. What's the law? So he says very clearly, Shebachutz, the ones that are outside of the courtyard, they're like ordinary foods in every respect, because they're still on the outside. They haven't become bikurim yet. The ones on the inside, the ones that are inside are like hekdesh.
What happens if it's on the border, half in, half out?
We're talking about now on the border.
No. There's a fruit there.
Oh, yeah.
And one here. What happens if it's
On the actual line itself.
Yeah. Then how does it get treated? In or out?
A cricket duck, you.
The line belongs that belongs to the-
Depends who support. Depends on VAR.
The whole of the ball is over the line.
That's right. How's it work in tennis? What percentage of the ball has to be
Doesn't matter.
Oh,
ball.
lightest?
It's on the line.
It touches the line even by his breath, it's it.
Yeah, millimeter on the lines.
Yeah. So
Aggression.
Now they don't know where it lands. When you reach the spot, that's poker.
chop it in half.
Why is the linesmen are bloody good these days in tennis?
Poker.
Okay, good question. Let's see. So he says that is the opinion that we're talking about. Because if you have to see the actual, if you have to be in Har HaBayit, you have to be in Temple Mount, or at least in the courtyard, it makes sense. This is the opinion. If you hold that half in, half out follows where it was, then that shows you that what defines holiness. What defines holiness is once you've already entered into Har HaBayit. That defines holiness. And if half of your contribution is still sitting outside, then that part won't be holy.
It's different. So it's different from when you allocate something to the temple.
Right? Yes, that's what we're saying. You're talking about like a contribution, like a korban.
Yeah.
Once you designate a korban to, let's say you've said this cow will be offered up in the Beis HaMikdash, then you're right. That cow is already holy. You can't benefit from that cow. So, good point. So the question is, why is fruit different? When you make the decision that something is a korban or dedicated to the Beit HaMikdash, you can't change your mind. The only way you can change your mind is if you redeem it. You can pay for it and exchange it. Use the money to buy another one, but and not use that one anymore.
It gets transferred from the problem to the money.
to the money. So the condition.
Maybe because the cow can move on its own accord, whereas the fruit can't. So if by designating it, even if it moves out on its own accord, it's still holy, whereas the fruit, where you put it, that's relevant.
Well, I actually wonder.
No, because if it's injured, you can replace it.
Yeah.
If you say that cow has been sacrificed and then they find that it's injured or it's got something wrong, you can. But there's a thing about the value and this and
Yeah.
that, and everything else, so.
Well, let's wait. I think the next paragraph's going to discuss fruits, like the other types of fruits, meiser, tithing,
We're talking about fruit, not from a Shemitah here.
not for the Shemitah year. Shemitah year, no one's allowed to touch. We're gonna fill that now. And when does the new crop, Israel's new produce, arrive to South Africa? The moment it starts arriving, thank you. We're gonna have issues because it's gonna be from the Shemitah year of last year. Okay, so on the bottom left-hand column at the bottom of the paragraph, Omer Rav Sheshes. Omer Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes says, thank you. This is going to be so it's related to the previous comment.
If you eat the bikurim, you're eating on the first fruit, which is meant to go to the
Correct.
Isn't there a separate problem?
It is.
You haven't yet crossed the.
The fact that you haven't made it holy.
That's still meant.
So you hear Evan's question? Evan's question is, why is it only when it arrives to Habayit, or we say B'fnei Habayit, in front of the house, why is that what makes it holy? Seemingly, the first fruits are the first fruits. And once the first fruits were selected, they're now holy, whether they reach Yerushalayim or they don't reach Yerushalayim yet. Shouldn't that make them already holy and prohibited to the individual to eat of? Why is it specifically only once it arrives to Har HaBayit?
Is it not? Sometimes it's something that you shouldn't do, that there's no penalty to do it. Or the penalty, as you said in the intro, what's it? Death at the hands of heaven.
Meaning it's not still wrong, you're saying?
It's still wrong, but there's no.
Well,
No, I think pain of death at the hands of heaven is talking about the real prohibition. When does it become prohibited? That's when we talk about Misa B'dei Shemayim. Is once it's prohibited, then the punishment is going to be Misa B'dei Shemayim. All right, because that's the halacha of Moshe Messina. That's Moshe's tradition. That when it comes to eating bikurim, the punishment for eating bikurim is going to be Misa B'dei Shemayim from heaven. The question is, at what point does that kick in? What we're suggesting now is that it kicks in only once it arrives to Temple Mount. The question is, but what about the previously? Previously, it was still your first fruits. It's like a firstborn son. A firstborn child is a bechor, whether or not you do anything to sanctify him. He's born the firstborn. He's prohibited, or he needs to be exchanged by the kohen. So Evan's asking, why is this different? That we needed to arrive to Temple Mount in order to dedicate it.
There's something about quantity. How many fruits do you have to? What constitutes the first fruit? You got one apple. Is that sufficient to be designated as bikurim? And if you've got two, maybe only the one.
You're saying, is there a shiur, a measurement for bikurim? The measurement for truma, because we say a meiser is a tenth, but truma that you give to the kohen can be much less than a meiser. It's 1/40th, 1/50th, or 1/60th. You can decide based on your generosity to the kohen. 40th, 50th, and 60th. Bikurim, I can't remember offhand what the measurement of Bikurim is and whether there is even a measurement. How do you decide? We know that you put a red string around the first fruits that pop out, but how many of them? I'm not sure if there is a shiur for that.
Probably the
It's a good
first
question.
tree that you go to, you know,
What is
because you can have a whole orchard. You can have an whole orchard and they're all got apples or oranges. and-
What's the first fruit?
The first one that's,
Let's see.
hatch, what do you call it, don't it? The first one that pops
Yeah,
out.
it's all that your whole orchard will be your
Huh?
first fruit.
But that means
There might not be a second one.
walking up and down the orchard.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. How often does it with you best
Yeah.
once a year?
I just did a quick search. It says Bikurim has no measurement from the Torah. But from Midivrehem, from the rabbis, they said 1 from 60th. And whoever wants to make the whole field Bikurim can do that.
Whole orchard.
Yeah.
Because within a. Jeez.
Interesting. It seems like it's a machloket actually. He brings another opinion here who says that Truma has a measurement midrabanan. The rabbis gave Truma because Torah doesn't say how much you give a kohen. So the rabbis are the ones that gave 40th, 50th, 60th. And Bikurim has no measurement. That's one opinion. The Rambam says that the Bikurim has no measurement from the Torah, but it does have a measurement of 1 from 60th midrabanan.
Yeah, but your one
Of your produce.
not the same as mine, because your orchard may be smaller than mine. It's gonna be bigger.
It doesn't matter.
I think it's
That's the 160th.
I suppose.
Yeah, but I mean, 160th of 200 is close to 160th of 1,000.
So qualifies.
Yeah, but I mean, your quantity is bigger.
I suppose, yeah,
If you've got 16 trees, one tree.
yeah, if you have one tree, it's essentially the first thing bad, essentially.
Yeah, but not a branch.
And it's fix the apples.
First time I'm getting lemons.
Maybe round up and close this. You can't exactly get 1.5 apples.
Okay,
So you round up, so if it's on tree and Makkos, you might be.
let's go on. Okay, so that was that. So we found the source of the opinion. The source of the opinion is Rabbi Eliezer, who said it depends where the fruits are. If they're out, then they're out. If they're in, then they're in. Okay, let's go on. I'm Rav Sheshes. It looks like we're going back to our original discussion about placing it. So we said that when you bring Bikurim to the Beit HaMikdash, you got to put it next to the Mizbeach. That shows your contribution to Hashem. So I'm Rav Sheshes, Bikurim Hanocha Ma'akeves Bahem Kriya Ei Ma'akeves Bahem. We mentioned this last time, that when it comes to Bikurim, placing it by the Mizbeach, placing it by the altar is essential, but the actual recitation, the declaration that we say, is not essential. Okay, so we said, come on, who does this go like? Who says this opinion that putting it by the Mizbeach is essential as part of the ceremony process, but the actual reading doesn't hold back. You don't have to, the Kohanim don't have to wait for the actual reading. It says, Ki hai Tana. It's in accordance with the following Tana, the following teacher in the Brisa. Tanya, Rabbi Yossi Emish Shlosha Dvarim, Mishum Shlosha Zkenim. He said 3 things in the name of 3 elders. Mark, we won't ask the definition there
No, we won't.
of an elder.
They're not,
Of the 3 things, only the one relevant. Okay,
one
So-
day you'll be there as well.
3. I'm already feeling like an elder. So, in the name of the 3 elders. 1, okay, so here we go. Let's see. Interesting, he only says I think he only brings one here. Let's see.
No, I'm just looking at that first note.
I saw that.
Yeah,
Number 6.
yeah, number 6.
Yeah, of the 3 things, only the one relevant to our discussion is quoted. Okay, so you'd have to go look in other places to find out what were the other statements said in the name of the 2 other elders.
It's a way of introducing an idea. Say there's 3 ideas, but then you get one.
3 ideas. No, this Gemora only quotes one, meaning what the authors of the Gemora did was they cut it out,
Okay, fine. So
and they only quoted which was
Which is
necessary.
actually often say, you know, the Gemara land.
The Gemara says normally all of it. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, it goes on a tangent.
Yeah.
Only a little
Yeah, why here did you decide to cut it all out? Yeah, interesting. So Rabbi Shmuel says, Yochol Ya'ale Adam, Ma'aseh Sheni, Bazman Hazeh, Yerushalayim, V'yichlenu. You may think that a person today should bring his Ma'aseh Sheni, his tithe, to Yerushalayim and eat it there as if the temple still stands. Now, Ma'aseh Sheni is that portion that you're supposed to eat in
You
Yerushalayim.
got to shiv it. You knocked over the coat.
Yeah, I know. So it's too busy with the lights and phones and everything.
There wouldn't be a Gemara share without that. So
So
don't
I've
worry.
taken over from.
Shalom. Shalom.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Don't worry. Just watch your Gemara there. Okay.
Within a week, we had somebody that knocked over somebody.
Okay.
this is a strong one.
Like I say that.
Yeah.
So Ma'aseh Sheni is that portion. Ma'aseh Sheni is that portion that you eat in Yerushalayim. So maybe you should take it. Maybe you should take it up today as well.
No, it doesn't go.
Okay, so what about I can do here? Okay, so now we're on footnote number 7. Just about that question about taking out Yerushalayim. Number 7. This Tana holds that the sanctity of Eretz Yisrael, as regards the Trumas and Maestros, the fruits, remains in force even after the Jews were for the most part driven out. In other words, once the majority of Jews have been removed from Israel, which was the case, even though now Israel has rebuilt itself to what? How many Jews live in Israel today? 8 million?
Is it 8
Okay.
now?
It's unbelievable.
Something.
They've crossed over, right? The majority.
Yeah, they've crossed over the majority.
They've crossed over the majority. It's quite amazing.
It's like, I think it's 45% or something, so it's not like.
Oh, they haven't reached over 50%.
No, in the world around
How many Jews in the world? I thought 14 million or something.
14.
How many is it? 8?
No,
30 million. I think it's around there. So it's
8 million in Manhattan.
So I thought it's,
6 million.
Yeah, I was close.
8 million in Manhattan. Yeah, 6 million Jews. I think
I
America
think Jews are 13. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Israel's 8. You sure Israel's 8?
I think it's a million.
I thought about
in-
6.
in York State.
Million.
About 6. It's
6
close.
million in America.
Yeah, so in York
And 6
State,
million in Israel too, I think. Yeah, I think it's 6 million in
It
Israel.
was a few years ago.
They've crossed, yeah. Anyway, so the point is, what happens if the majority are removed, which we were all removed, and do we still hold on to the sanctities? He's saying this Tana holds that the sanctity of Israel still holds on. Thus, one is biblically required to separate Truma and Masters from his crop in Eretz Yisrael nowadays. So that's why we do it, because you still have the sanctity of Eretz Yisrael. He considers whether the Ma'aseh Sheni may be eaten in Yerushalayim even nowadays, instead of being redeemed for money. That's his question. In other words, like this. According to him, Israel retains its sanctity. And therefore you have to remove Trumas and Ma'aseros, even though we don't actually give it to the Kohanim today. And the Levim. Why? Because they're not purely pure. They're not 100% pure.
It's also a question on whether they actually are allowed to be condemned.
Okay, that we don't, yeah, okay. And therefore, how can we give it to them if it's doubtful? Well, and therefore, how can we give it to them if it's doubtful? Yeah. Good point. Yeah. So as a result, what do we do? The mashgiach comes to the farm, he removes truma and meiser and lets it rot. So that the owner can't benefit from it, but the Kohanim also can't get it because Evan's point is good. You don't know 100% that they're Kohanim. And remember, if they eat of Truma, they're transgressing a biblical commandment. If they eat of Truma and they're not Kohanim, they transgress a biblical commandment. So rather don't give it to them, number one. Number two is they're not 100% purified either, because they haven't gone through the purification process of the red heifer. That cow, the ashes of the cow mixed with water that purifies a person from dead bodies. They haven't gone through that process either. So therefore, what happens to Trumas and Maaseh is that they let it rot. And by the way, a big part of the hashgacha of the Mashgiach's letter for a restaurant is to do with this topic: was Truma and Maaseh removed correctly from the produce that you're being served for breakfast, for the fruits and vegetable, for example. That's part of what they're confirming. Here, it's different here, or it's in addition to here. Here, they're ensuring that the ingredients are right, or the flour was sifted. That's what they're doing here. But they're doing that plus more. They're going to ensure that the fruits are done correctly because Israel retains its sanctity. And therefore, the Truma and the Maaseh has to be removed. But nobody can eat of it, so it gets removed and it gets left to rot away into the ground. Okay. So now his question is like this. What about Maaseh Sheni? So Maaseh Sheni is normally eaten by the owner. Right? Now, maybe, do you actually eat it or do you let it rot? Or do you take money? Right, there was another option that you would redeem the Maaseh Sheni. And by the way, you didn't have to buy oranges.
But it's got to be, it said it has to be redeemed for a much lower value than what it is.
Would you see that?
I saw that. In note 7.
In the second half.
Yeah, in the second half.
The Torah requires that unredeemed Maaseh Sheni be eaten b'fnei Hashem in the presence of Hashem, which is understood to signify Yerushalayim. The Tana's question is whether Yerushalayim has the status of being in the presence of Hashem only when the temple is standing, or even after its destruction. If the law is that Maaseh Sheni cannot be eaten after the destruction, it may be redeemed for a fraction of its value. Interesting. And eaten as ordinary food. And the redemption money is disposed of.
What does it mean?
What does that mean? It means used? What does it mean? It means it's used. The redemption money is disposed of. No, it means the redemption fruit is disposed of. There's a mistake there.
Redemption money.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah, you throw the fruits away. You can't touch the
It
fruits.
says eaten as ordinary food.
Oh, I see.
It means redeeming it for low amounts of money.
But then why redeem it for money if you're disposing?
No, what happens is like this. You take Maaseh off the oranges, but you can't eat it. But the question is, can you eat it or can't you eat it? So one way is to redeem it. So you exchange it, and then that money can buy any food you want in Yerushalayim. Shawarmas, falafel.
Okay, but in Jews.
In Yerushalayim, right? That's the way it used to be done. If you couldn't bring, that's right. So if you couldn't bring the produce to Yerushalayim, you can redeem it and eat whatever you want in Yerushalayim. On food in Jerusalem. Right, exactly. But now the question is, what happens if I want to eat those? Now we're asking the question: what happens if I want to eat those fruits myself in Yerushalayim? And the question is, does Yerushalayim hold its sanctity? So Truma and Maaseh, we don't really give to the Kohanim, and I think we have to say because they're not pure enough. But Maaseh Sheni was able to be eaten by the owner. So now the question is, can the owner now take his fruits and eat in Yerushalayim?
But surely,
In today's times, that's the question.
if Israel's still claims holiness, then you have to with Shemitah, then surely
That's what he's assuming. It is assuming. But look here, the din. So that's why he's saying. If you look at the wording, Evan, Yachol means you would imagine, you would say that he can now eat the fruits themselves in Yerushalayim because Yerushalayim holds its sanctity. But the truth is that it was refuted and we negated that. Why? How do we negate it? So he says, Bechor ta'on hava'as mokum. We're back into the Gemora, about a midway down. Bechor ta'on hava'as mokum. The Bechor offering has to come to Yerushalayim and eat in there. The Bechor generally. Maaseh Sheni ta'on havas makom. Ma'aser Sheni, the fruits owned or eaten by the owner, must be brought to Yerushalayim. So now we see a similarity. They both have to be brought to Yerushalayim. The firstborn, as well as the Ma'aser Sheni. So if that's the case, we can now compare. Ma Bechor, just like the Bechor, the firstborn, offering Eino Ela B'fnei Abayis. It's only when the temple stands. If you look at footnote number 9, a Bechor cannot be eaten after the destruction, since there is no altar on which it can be offered. So you can't offer the Bechor on the Mizbeach. So just like the Bechor is only when the temple stands, back to the Gemora, Af Meiser Eino Ela B'fnei Abayis. So to Meiser is only when the temple stands, but not nowadays. That's what the Gemara tries to assume. You want to know if you can eat Meiser in Yerushalayim? You can't eat Meiser in Yerushalayim. Because just like you can't eat the firstborn, or just like the firstborn does not apply today, so too Ma'aser Sheni shouldn't apply today either. That's how we compare the two. Because the two are similar. You could differentiate, by the way. Yeah, he's going to say now. First he wants to say that you compare the firstborn to the fruits. The firstborn normally needs Yerushalayim. When there's no temple, nothing applies. So too with the fruits. They normally need Yerushalayim. When there's no temple, you don't need to Yerushalayim. That's how we initially compare. But the reason why it's not such a strong similarity is because the Bechor needs a Mizbeach. It needs an altar. So it's unique in a way, because you have to offer up the Bechor on the Mizbeach as a korban. That's why I can't apply it today. But Ma'aser Sheni has no offering on the Mizbeach, and therefore, is it really similar? That's going to be the next point.
Argue or question, what about the korban Pesach? Is there, I don't know, they had a whole debate or discussion, like, you don't need a temple for korban Pesach. But should people be doing it today?
Now there's the korban Pesach
To have a lamb and take it on the 14th.
doesn't have to be offered up on the Mizbeach in the Beis Hamikdash, you say.
Yeah.
Therefore, in a way, the theory is so why shouldn't apply today, is what you say.
Because I remember listening to this lecture and he goes through all the things.
The details, I can hear the question.
Yeah.
If it was done in the privacy of my home, then why shouldn't it apply today as well? You're gonna have an issue of purification, which I'm not sure how we get around that. It's because if you're impure, let's say from a dead body, and you haven't been sprinkled by the red heifer, you can't really get out of it. So I'm not sure how we're gonna. Maybe more of a hypothetical, which is a very typical Talmudic discussion. Hypothetical discussion rather than a real discussion, because chances are that the majority of people are still considered halachically impure. Okay, so now he pushes off the similarity. He says you can't compare a case of the firstborn to this. Ma lebechor shekain ta'un matan domim ve'emurim legabe mizbeach. The bechor offering needs the sprinkling of its blood and the offering of its parts on the mizbeach. Right, that's why it cannot be practiced today, because there is no mizbeach. But how do you apply that to Ma'aser Sheni of the eating of the fruits that doesn't need an altar at all?
We walked over the line.
Once you stepped over the line, it should be considered holy already. Look at footnote 10. The reason a bechor is not eaten after the destruction is seemingly not because the eating is inherently prohibited, but because the requisite avodah, the actual service, is unfulfillable without a temple and an altar. As this law cannot logically be extended to Ma'aser Sheni, which has no comparable avodah that would require the existence of the temple. Okay, and therefore, how can you compare the two? Just because it happens to the first doesn't mean it's going to happen to Ma'aser Sheni of the fruits. Okay, over the page to 19A2. So he says like this. He says, Bikurim yochichu. Let's look at Bikurim. Bikurim doesn't need an altar. There's no offering of blood. There's no sacrificial parts. The Bikurim. And nevertheless, Bikurim only applies when there's a temple. Similarly, so too, Ma'aser Sheni. Even though there's no blood offering and no sacrificial parts, it should only last when the temple stands. There's only one major difference. See, the Gemora says back. There's a reason why Bikurim can't work now. This goes back to the first point. What does Bikurim need? Number one, put it down by the altar. And then declare. Say that whole passage. That's praising Hashem. Now, if there's no altar, it's true that you don't throw blood on the altar. You don't throw limbs on the altar. But you need to be able to put it by the altar. So there's a reason why Bikurim are unique, and there's a reason why Bikurim don't apply today. You can't put it down by the altar. Because you can't put it by the altar, it doesn't apply. So therefore, once again, don't bring me Bikurim as an example for Ma'aser Sheni. It's two separate things. Bikurim needs a ritual, putting it down by the altar. And if there's no altar, you can't put it down. So therefore, you can't do it because there's no altar. But Ma'aser Sheni, which you eat yourself, doesn't need any ritual, and therefore should not be compared. It's true, it's fruits and fruits, but the fruits are different. Bikurim has a holy step in this. So it sounds like you should be able to. That's what we're assuming. It sounds like you should be able to offer up to eat Ma'aser Sheni in Yerushalayim today, rather than exchanging it for money. I'm just thinking what would practically happen today for farmers.
But I don't understand. I thought that Bikurim required an altar.
Yes.
Sheni doesn't require.
Yes. That's the answer.
Yeah, so the one you can.
And therefore, one you can do and one you can't. That's right. So Ma'aser Sheni, we're ending this paragraph to say that Ma'aser Sheni, you may be able to do it today. I'm just thinking through this for a second. A farmer, remember, Ma'aser Sheni came off, is it not, 3rd year and 6th year? 1, 2. Ma'aser Ani was the
3rd and 6th for the poor.
Oh, the other years of Ma'aser Sheni. 1, 2, 4, and 5. I think that was the poor man's.
No.
Can you correct me?
3 and 6.
And then what was 3 and 6? They alternated. Just check that. So I'm just thinking, what would happen today? Today, and the Levi always got. Yeah, the Levite always got the Ma'aser. For sure, or a Kohen. Yeah, absolutely. So what would happen today? Today they would go to the farmer, take off the Ma'aser. He would go to Yerushalayim with it. That's the question. Or even that, would he redeem it? Or just let it rot?
What happened if the farmer is renting the land? Who does it belong to?
No, who does it belong to? No.
Bikurim?
No, your question is who's responsible to accept it?
So it says here, the big obligation to give 2 tithes, each one is Ma'aser, from the produce of the land of Israel. The first tithe, Ma'aser Rishon, is given to the Levi. The second tithe, Ma'aser Sheni, is taken to Jerusalem and eaten there, or redeemed with coins, which are then taken to Jerusalem for the purchase of food to be eaten there. In the 3rd and 6th years of the 7-year Shemitah cycle, the Meister Sheni obligation to be faced with Meister Aim.
So you're right. So 1, 2, 4, and 5 was Meiser.
Yeah.
1, 2, 4, and 5 was
1, 2, 4, 5.
was Meiser Sheni. 3 and 6 was a poor man. Thank you. So what happens today? That's the question.
I know that this thing in the Kavot that talks about the different, what you call it, famines or the specific, didn't honor this.
Yeah,
part and
that's
this
right.
part and-
That's right. I think chapter 5 or 6. End of Begabat. So my father used to work in an orange juice company. They used to produce. They still do. He worked there for quite a few years. They would produce fresh orange juice. And it was in the Yeshuv on the way to Modi'in, actually, called Mavocharon. And the Mashkiach used to arrive and extract. They used to prepare it for him. So they used to take a massive cart or crate of oranges, and they used to prepare it outside while they worked on the rest. They said to him, as he would arrive, he said, "This is your cart." I don't remember how he calculated, to be honest. But I'm assuming he had to calculate Truma, which means either 40th, 50th, or 60th. Then he had to calculate Meiser Rishon, which is the Levite's portion. Then he had to calculate, that's a 10th of the produce. Then he had to calculate another 10th for either Meiser Sheni or Meiser Ani. And that whole entire crate was then dumped by the truck into the ground. Because who's going to benefit from it? Maybe the poor man. See, I'm not sure. Maybe part of it was given to the poor man. We need to do our research on this. We don't live with this in South Africa because we don't have the laws of the tithe. But in Israel, they live with this. Maybe Meiser Sheni goes to the poor man. Okay, we'll find out.
You actually abide by these laws today in Israel.
That's what I'm saying. If you have a tu'udah of hashgacha, then they are abiding by the laws.
Maybe
I mean, these are taxes or not taxes.
Sure, it's taxes.
Are they tax?
So,
Are they
so,
tax
so-
deductible?
well, they- No, but that was the thing, does this, would these sort of things, the Bikurim and the tithes and all of that, does that go before before government of Israel or go after a government tax? Or and does the government tax include this or not?
Fascinating
It
question.
looks like maybe it includes before and then you get a deduction.
So is it anybody, is it only farmers or anybody that produces something?
No, if you extract the fruit, if you walk down the streets of Israel and you see a hanging fruit,
Mhm.
I guess in the streets it'll be more like a plum of some
Or a
sort.
mulberry or something.
Yeah, you've got an obligation to cut off a piece
And give it to who?
and put it into the ground.
Even if it's stealing, not
Well, if it hangs over public property, it's not stealing. But then you have an obligation of removing money. And to be honest, I don't know how. I haven't done enough research in this. I don't know how to do it. How would you calculate?
Is it applicable to a factory that produces?
Yeah.
that?
Anybody
So in other words,
that
a dairy farm
anybody that harvests the crop.
and dairy?
No, not dairy, not from cows. Anybody that harvests the crop is responsible
So if you take a plum, take a bite, spit it out, type of thing.
or cut it off.
Or cut it off, yeah.
Take two, throw one in the ground.
I had that question because a few years ago we did a shuk, a tour. The last trip we took, we did a tour in the shuk of Tel Aviv. And the reason why I say Tel Aviv is because Tel Aviv doesn't always have hechsherim on all their produce, on all their shops. If you also do a tour of the shuk in Yerushalayim, it's easy. If you do a tour of the shuk in Tel Aviv, it's more complicated. And one of the stores I remember I had an issue with or a problem with was the fresh juice store because they have no hashgacha sign. And so you walk in and it looks amazing. You know, they're squeezing all these fresh fruits and producing these great fruit drinks. but I need to know if somebody's been here to extract the meiser. That's how laws apply in Israel. If you don't have a tu'udah on that fruit juice store, you got a problem eating, because who's taking responsibility to remove those fruits? As we've seen, it's so complicated.
And if you think a tithe, it's got to be for the benefit of somebody else, not the tax, not just to dump in the ground. The concept of a tithe must be
Helping someone. So I think,
Went to the labor.
no, that's
no, that makes
Yeah.
sense. So I think to answer your question though is that today, and that's the question. I'm not sure if everyone's going to agree to this, that's biblical. I think some hold it's rabbinical. But the reason why we observe it today, even though it's not going to a particular recipient, is because we don't want Am Yisrael to forget about these laws. That's why the Chachamim put the laws in place, or kept the laws in place. Because if we abolish Ma'aser, and we say, well, now the temple's destroyed, and there's no Kohanim that are pure enough to accept it, to eat it, and therefore it's no longer necessary to keep Ma'aser. The worry there is that generations and generations are going to go on, and nobody's going to remember the laws of Ma'aser anymore.
So in other words, it's a lesser of two evils to rather waste than to lose the law.
To lose the law, yeah, that's the worry. Is that farmers will forget.
offering sacrifice.
Okay, that you're saying the same thing. We should keep. That's very hard because we don't have a temple. We don't have a mizbeach. So because you don't have a mizbeach, what's your choice? Let the animal roam till it drops. I don't know.
Indian.
Don't know how that's going to work. Okay. So my only question I have about this discussion, we'll go back to this next week, is let's say you can't eat Ma'aser Sheni in Yerushalayim because we're not holy enough, because Yerushalayim is not holy enough, whatever the case may be, let's say, because at the moment we're assuming you can. The next paragraph is going to bring another reason why you can't. But let's assume you can. So today, how does it work? Do you redeem? I'm curious to know how this works in modern day. Would you take cash and I don't think that's not done. Take the cash and buy food in Yerushalayim. I haven't heard of such a thing before. Okay, something to think about Ma'aser Sheni. The people who would know are the farmers in Israel.
It'd be easy enough.
To find what?
Not it's redeem it for cash.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to figure out if I've seen it done. I've seen it done. That people take cash to redeem. Okay, well, 19A2. We are